the epicenters of the war, Pokrovsk and Kupyansk. It is here that the outcome of the entire battle with Russia is being decided. The front is ablaze and the enemy is suffering catastrophic losses. A secret operation in the armed forces, a new trap for the Russians. This is what they are afraid to tell Putin. The Russian command is in panic and has no idea what's going on. We will show you the hottest footage and reveal the whole truth about how our forces are turning the tide. Watch.
The battles for control over the cities of Kupyansk and Pokrovsk, two strategic hubs on Ukraine's eastern front, do not stop for a single day. The occupiers keep throwing in new forces trying to break through the defenses. But Ukrainian troops are steadfastly holding back the assaults, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy.
The occupiers are using a scorched earth tactic both in the Kupyansk and Pokrovsk directions. This means massive strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces, temporary deployment points of personnel, and first and foremost on the residential infrastructure of these cities, as well as the use of various means of destruction, including heavy flamethrower systems like the TOS-1 Ason Sepyok. This is thermobaric weaponry which is prohibited by conventions. Its use is banned in urban environments. It has indiscriminate effects, including on the civilian population.
Pokrovsk is currently the epicenter of the fiercest fighting.
Up to 170,000 personnel have been concentrated by the occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction. This is a quarter of all the units of the occupying country's army currently present on the territory of Ukraine. Plus, the occupiers have an advantage in the use of tactical and army aviation. This specifically refers to strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces using guided aerial bombs, KABs.
Russian units are tightening their grip around the city and trying to complete the encirclement. Kremlin propaganda is already reporting a cauldron, but these statements are just another round of information manipulation. The General Staff of Ukraine denies Moscow's claim of a complete encirclement. At the same time, they acknowledge that the situation there is extremely serious.
Over the past few days, Ukraine's defense forces have managed to significantly stabilize the situation directly in Pokrovsk itself. By order of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, special units of the Special Operations Forces, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and other components of Ukraine's defense forces were deployed to Pokrovsk. They are conducting search operations aimed at eliminating small enemy assault groups.
Moreover, fighters from the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala cleared the city council building in Pokrovsk and raised the Ukrainian flag there, a symbol of not only military but also political significance.
Special units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, in particular the Special Operations Forces of the main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, are currently involved in unblocking the logistics for Ukrainian defenders, namely the delivery routes for ammunition, evacuation of the wounded, and rotation of personnel. This is the main task facing these special units.
Tactical successes are also being observed in adjacent areas along the Pokrovsk direction. On the Dobropilya salient, Ukrainian defenders have taken control of the settlement of Shakhova. This complicates the enemy's plans for a major breakthrough and increases the chances for local stabilization.
This is the so-called Dobropilya incursion. It is precisely Shakhova that effectively cuts off Russian units from their rear supply bases. In addition, over the past week, Ukrainian defense forces have deoccupied a number of settlements in this direction. These are Kucherev, Yar, Shakhova, and Sukachki. This has significantly improved the tactical situation.
On the other flank is Kupyansk in the Kharkiv region. Here, fighting is taking place for every street and every building. Flags on the buildings change several times a day.
The situation along the Kupyansk direction has been stabilized. Moreover, even Russian sources note the lack of progress both in the Kupyansk direction and accordingly in the so-called Kupyansk-Sli direction.
Ukrainian forces are conducting a series of counterattacks. In particular, in the northern part of the city, the defenders managed to push back the occupiers. But it's too early to speak of a final success. The situation remains dynamic and unstable, changing literally every hour.
The defense forces carry out their tasks every day without stopping. They are constantly eliminating both small groups and stopping columns of equipment. In the near future, the situation, both according to Deep State and other maps, will be constantly changing. Because in any case, we are not going to abandon the city or give it to the enemy.
Pokrovsk and Kupyansk are the 2 points where the further outcome of the war is being decided. Russia is throwing thousands of soldiers and tons of metal there, but it has not been able to break Ukrainian resilience. Every meter of this land is a fight for life, for the future. And while the enemy tries to win by sheer numbers, Ukrainian fighters are destroying those numbers. Shock. Putin is fleeing Crimea. The deoccupation plan has been launched. The Ukrainian armed forces are delivering powerful strikes against enemy military targets. Warehouses, headquarters, and bases are literally exploding one after another. Every operation is meticulously planned, every strike is precise. Experts are convinced that Ukraine is preparing something grand. The start of deoccupation is just around the corner. All the details are coming up next.
A unique operation that lasted for months ended with a spectacular explosion in the middle of Donetsk. Locals say that nothing like this has ever been seen before in the occupied territories. Where did they hit? What was destroyed? And most importantly, what did the Ukrainian armed forces use to strike?
Judging by the special effects and the massive explosions, it was the Flamingo missiles at work.
So let's go through everything step by step. Last night, a powerful explosion rocked Donetsk, after which, according to eyewitness videos, a fireball rose into the sky resembling a nuclear mushroom cloud, and windows were blown out in buildings several kilometers from the epicenter. Right now,
my windows have been blown out.
In fact, this is the area of the Oktyabrsk airport. A large ammunition depot, missiles hit there. There is no official information yet, but people are already talking about an ammunition depot. I watched the video. It's spectacular. Most likely, it really was a very large missile or shell depot, because in the video, just like in science fiction movies or computer games, there's an explosion, then a second explosion, and you can clearly see this glowing, rapidly expanding shockwave. In other words, the strike on the depots in Donetsk was very successful.
a bit later, some clarity on this issue was provided by Robert Magyar-Brudi, the head of UAV systems for the Ukrainian armed forces. According to his information, the strike hit a large depot of Shahed-type drones where warheads were also stored.
The targeting of this complex objective turned into a months-long painstaking intelligence operation pieced together from small fragments. Last night, it was carried out using appropriate strike assets by the Special Operations Forces and the missile troops of the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
Analysts note that despite the Shahed's long range, it was extremely important for the Russians to keep the drone depot close to the front line. After all, when the occupiers launch UAVs just a few dozen kilometers from the line of contact, the Ukrainian armed forces simply don't have time to respond quickly. As a result, the drones carry out their terror in frontline cities and also strike at the forward positions of our troops.
Disrupting the logistics of supplying shells and missiles for the drones for the Pokrovsk direction for Pokrovsk itself is very important for us right now.
But what exactly the defense forces did there, our command preferred not to disclose. One thing is certain, drones definitely took part in the attack, but something else followed them as well.
As the footage from there shows, it was clearly not just drones in action. Apparently they were distracting the local air defense, but the final decisive strike was delivered by something resembling a rocket. It might have been a drone or possibly a missile.
And
the fact that missiles were indeed used is also supported by Magyar's reports about the participation of Ukraine's missile forces in the attack.
I don't think that the warehouse with Shaheds was unprotected, that it was just some hangars, most likely not. They were talking about some kind of underground bunker. And that's another reason why I think it was Flamingos. Of course, they could have used Storm Shadow as well. And Storm Shadow would also be suitable here since it has a bunker busting capability. Nevertheless, The scale of the detonation shows, or at least it seems to me, that if you look at the first second, the explosion was clearly bigger than just a couple hundred kilograms of a Storm Shadow warhead.
So yes, most likely it really was our Ukrainian flamingos. By the way, this is already the third time just this week that they've inflicted colossal damage on the Russians. But in Crimea, such power wasn't needed. That's why drones were sent to attack the peninsula. In occupied Simferopol, around 2:30 in the morning, a fire broke out at an oil depot. Presumably, we're talking about Krymneftezbyt in the area of the village of Bitumnoye. There were also reports of 4 strikes in Gvardeyskoye. After that, smoke rose into the sky. There, the hits likely struck the local power plant, which temporarily ceased operations.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Sensational. The US has stabbed Putin in the back. Shocking. While the Russian dictator was begging Syria for bases, Washington is secretly entering the game. The new US military base is a direct blow to the Kremlin. What secret deal are the Americans preparing? Right now, all the details of the global reshuffle.
Trump is increasing pressure on Putin, but
this is happening. There's nothing that can be done about it here.
the US is increasingly pushing Russia out of the Middle East, causing the Kremlin dictator to lose his foothold in Syria.
There's no need to be afraid. Anyone who starts to get scared will lose everything right away. But it's absolutely necessary to understand what might be happening.
America is preparing to deploy a military contingent at an airbase in Damascus. Syrian sources note that it's not just about a military presence, but also about creating a center for intelligence, refueling, logistics, and humanitarian missions. At the same time, Syria will officially retain sovereignty over the facility.
For Trump, it's simply important to demonstrate the success of his policy in the context of establishing stability in the Muslim world. And overall, I think this is part of a corresponding policy that is generally connected to the Middle East. In other words, overall, Trump is primarily focused on establishing and maintaining stability in the Middle East that would not interfere with oil extraction.
The new base will be located near Syria's southern borders, close to areas that are planned to become a demilitarized zone as part of the upcoming pact between Damascus and Tel Aviv. The mediator is the administration of US President Donald Trump, who is personally overseeing the negotiations.
The United States firmly expects and anticipates that there will, in the foreseeable future, be a new governing regime established in Syria, which at the very least will be quite loyal and supportive to Israel. This significant development is expected to help stabilize the situation in the region and will likely reduce tensions overall. So the main goal here is to reduce tensions. The aim is to ensure that there are no new escalations, and in this way that the United States will not need to maintain a constant large-scale military presence in the Middle East. According to
Reuters, American C-130 transport planes have already conducted test landings at the base. Local staff confirmed that American specialists have been arriving there in recent weeks. Already on Monday, November 10th, Trump will hold a meeting with the new Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara at the White House. This will be the first visit of the head of the Syrian state to the United States.
For al-Shara, this is another step toward recognition of his legitimacy, even though he is not technically an elected president, but nevertheless, no one is really paying much attention to that. That is, well, yes, he is being recognized by the President of the United States. For him, obviously, this is a significant personal victory that will allow him to strengthen his power. On the other hand, for Trump, this is kind of a demonstration that his Middle East policy is successful. So I think this is more of a mutually beneficial situation.
Let us recall that on October 15th, the president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, arrived in Moscow to meet with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The negotiations took place in the Kremlin. We
maintain diplomatic relations.
Well, can you really call them relations? Just a few years ago, Russia was threatening to kill al-Shara. Putin changes his rhetoric quickly. Moreover, the Kremlin supported Assad's regime and fought against those who wanted to overthrow the dictator. Assad fled to Russia and is still hiding there. Russia, which had maintained its influence in Syria for decades, now found itself outside the key processes. After the fall of Assad's regime, the Kremlin lost its military bases and political weight in the region, and the United States took the vacant spot.
It's clear that the new Syrian authorities are bargaining. Who will make the better offer? And so far, it seems that the offer from the United States looks more attractive to the new Syrian authorities. If things continue in this direction, it is quite possible that, even though there may not be any formal break with Moscow, Russia will clearly lose its position. Still, I think that in any case, it's impossible to say that Moscow's current position in Syria is comparable to what it was during the Assad era.
Russia is losing its influence on the world stage, which is evidence of the failure of Vladimir Putin's foreign policy. And this is only the beginning.